September 7th. Questions and comments can be submitted prior to or during the meeting by emailing slassard@bucksportmaine.gov or calling 469-7368. Roll call, Jake.
Councilor Eastman.
Present.
Councilor Morrison is absent. Deputy Mayor Bissonnette.
Here.
Mayor Stewart.
Here.
Councilor Ormsby is absent. Councilor Bishop.
Here.
And Councilor Rankin is absent.
Item 3 is presentation of town council recognitions. We have none. Item 4 is minutes of previous meetings. We have council minutes from 8/24/2023. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Item 5 is correspondence. Police calls on Verona and Orland over the last month. Any questions on those? Item 6 is second reading, and we will have public hearings on all of these at the end of the meeting tonight. First is second reading for the commercial solar moratorium ordinance. Any questions on that? Next is the second reading for the PPI program, Bucksport Safety, Accessibility, and Economic Study. Questions on that, or we will have a public hearing on that also. The next is second reading for the Charter Change Council wages. And there will be a public hearing on that also. Item 7 is discussion items, Finance Committee update from 9/7/2023. Who's the chair of that? Paul?
Me, yes.
There you go.
Yep. We met with someone who was interested in refinancing a microloan due to some personal circumstances. We did discuss some issues around communication, etc., but in the end, the committee is not bringing that forward to the council.
Any questions? Thank you. Next item is animal shelter options.
We had talked about whether or not something would be on the ballot for referendum this fall, and it won't. But Luke has some additional information, and Rich does, and I'd like to schedule an infrastructure committee to talk about the information that they have on buildings, and then if anything were to occur that would require a vote, it would have to happen in the subsequent year.
Okay. What's the regulatory review on the 28th that you've already scheduled? What's that for?
Regulatory review is scheduled.
I don't remember.
For the Bucksport Motor Inn.
What's that?
Oh, for the
Bucksport
design.
Yes, the
thing.
Bucksport Motor Inn, but
Are they going to be ready?
Luke and I have been out there already. We're ready.
that's at 6 o'clock.
So maybe we might want to push the animal shelter to the October meeting. If it's not going to be on a ballot anyway, just to give it time.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
So we'll do it in the first October meeting.
Yep.
We'll do a 6 o'clock with that.
Okay.
I saw your hand up, ma'am.
Yes, will there be a time tonight when I can express my thoughts about the placement of the animal shelter that I read in the paper, where they're talking about putting it? Will there be any time for tonight's
So
discussion?
what we've decided is it's not going to go on any agendas tonight. We're actually going to have a committee meeting on October, the first meeting we have in October at 6 o'clock.
So,
But if she wants to speak
If
tonight.
There's public comment.
If you-
Public comment.
Sure.
There's public
Absolutely.
comment.
Come on up. This is a discussion item, so come on up.
okay, yeah. I read in the paper that it was a discussion item, that it was time for the public to express their views. And I brought a map, but maybe I won't need it. So I live on Silver Lake Road.
Could you just give us your name, please?
Oh, sorry. Susan Steingass.
Yes.
And I live on, I don't know if is that,
You're good.
am I loud enough?
You're good.
Okay, so I live on Silver Lake Road, and I also kayak it all the time. I'm the loon counter, everything. And I know how sound travels across Silver Lake. It travels across water, not just because there's no obstruction, but because of a science of sound whereby the water's cooler and the sound bends in a certain way so that the sound can travel much further than you would think across water, more so than even a grassy field without trees. So, it's in the science. And so I think an animal shelter, where every time I read in the paper they're talking about way down behind the town garage. When you get way down behind the town garage, you're very near the edge of Silver Lake. The trails are down there. And this would be very disruptive to people that go out on the lake for tranquility fishing, paddling, because dog kennels always have open runs. And when I started reading about this in the paper over a year ago or so, they talked about moving it because of the barking was causing, people to be upset that at the new Silver Lake Estates. And it's, that's a nice place to live. But the kennel was there, and it does, they're closer to it there. I don't think for another reason to put it where you're talking about is good. Even for them, it's not far enough away. It's not far enough away. And so if you look at the water, there's a channel that goes down towards where the transfer station is, where the shelter now is. And that channel doesn't bring the sound across the main body of the lake the way that it will if you move it. And I could talk about it on the map or whatever, because I know the lake very well. I'm out there several times a week.
Just so you know, there really hasn't been any decisions. That's what we've talked about.
Right. But when you are deciding it, I hope you'll look up how sound travels across water and realize that some of these homes have been there a long time, and they didn't build their house next to a dog kennel. And plus, Silver Lake is a huge asset to the town, not only for your drinking water, but recreation. It's like the wilderness a mile off Main Street. And to ruin that with a dog kennel, and think of it this way, if you had a camp or a home on Alamoosic, would that association allow a dog kennel shelter with barking dog runs to be built near the edge of Alamoosic? So think of it that way, and you might want to protect a very valuable asset. That's all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'm all for a new dog shelter, but it's not the right place. That's
Thanks.
all.
Item 8, agenda items. First is resolve 2024-16 to amend the mill rate for 2023-2024 from $13.95 to $12.75. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Second.
The bills that went out at $12.75. The rate you had approved was $13.95, and it was determined after that, when the program was run, that it had eliminated the valuations related to the stabilization program entirely from taxes instead of just the increase. And so adding those back in with the assistance of the software people that did the program in the first place, upped the valuation to the point where the mill rate needed to be dropped further than it had before, from $13.95 to the $12.75 rate, in order to not exceed the 5% overlay that's allowed. And we didn't go with 5% either. We went with about 2.5%, but significant enough to be available for abatements granted as a result of valuation changes that may not have been entirely accurate based on condition or other factors that will be determined as the assessor reviews these properties and as people contact her.
I know we don't have a crystal ball, but we've always tried and talked about making sure that we don't do this with the mill rate up and down and mounts, peaks and valleys. By dropping it, by having it this low, are we setting ourselves up to do that? Or, and again, it's a crystal ball, I know.
No, we're not, because the, and this was actually my manager's report, but I'll do it now because it's all relative. The, as you all remember, following the closure of the mill, the following year, the town raised the mill rate $3, and that was in the 15-16 tax year. And they did that to make it through that year and also utilize $2 million in fund balance until the state program kicked in that increased aid to education and revenue sharing that offset most of the $2 million that had been used. And from that time, 2016 to 2022-23, the mill rate went from 17.10 down in the low 16s, and in 23 was at 16.95. But it never got back to the 17.10 that it was in 2015-16 unless you did something to your property, added to it, built on, it got sold for a much higher price, then taxes didn't go up over that 17.10, or they were down. And the council consciously did this in 2015-16 when half of Main Street was empty and 276 local jobs were gone and a lot of other impact. There was a real push to sort of hold a course until, and as we emerged from that, COVID happened, and COVID has changed more than the fact that when property values started to rise as people migrated across the country, we all thought that that was going to be a spike, that prices were going to go up, and then in a year or two they were going to go down. And so we didn't respond as a community by just jacking values up when that started to happen. And almost 4 years out, we're now at a point with our state valuation, we're at the low 60%, where that if we do not adjust our values closer to fair market value, according to the state, would result in the loss of a substantial amount of homestead, veterans exemption, and revenue share. Plus, put us in non-compliance for the purposes of assessing, which is we do by state law, not by local ordinance. But on top of that, we in Bucksport have seen the impact of a society that now can work remote in many ways. We've had a significant amount of people who have purchased property here who work remotely in other areas of the country, and the pressure on property sales, which was extreme, while property sales have slowed, they have slowed because inventory is low. And inventory is low because even though you can sell your property for twice what you ever thought might be possible, where are you going to go? If you don't already have another property, then you can't. So inventory is low. But when a property goes on the market, it is not selling for lower prices. It is not selling for anywhere near what our cost schedule said that you could build a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house for $88,000. There's no one in Bucksport that would sell a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house for $88,000. And we had valuations that tracked that way. So we waited, thinking it was a spike, and it wasn't a spike. Things got worse, and unfortunately, the other things that we knew were coming, which was the eventual time when the school budget was going to go up more than it had in recent years. And this was the year, $406,000. On top of that, in 2019, the town voted to do a $3 million road project understanding that there would be debt service that went along with that. And guess what year that debt service kicked in? $239,000 additional dollars. That's this year. Another result of supply chain, fuel costs, et cetera, is a $92,000 increase in our transfer station budget to accommodate the additional tipping fees and transportation fees for demolition debris at the facility. That was significant. And the other big item was we added 2 full-time firefighter EMS people that fell into this budget as a result of the increased number of fire and EMS calls that had challenged our staffing to the point that we were seeing more calls being covered by other agencies at a much longer response time than people are used to when they call an ambulance in Bucksport. So we, unfortunately, during our budget process, when this was all discussed, when we were talking about the fact that this was going to be a hard year, there was going to be increases, there wasn't a lot. It feels like I've been talking about it since January, which I have, but unless someone was here or listening, they didn't know. It was, I know that Enterprise discussed it some, but I also know that people are aware of what has happened with the real estate market and how hard it is to find property. It's really easy to sell it, but finding it is, and that unfortunately state tax law goes on fair market value of properties based on sales and construction costs, and it doesn't go based on income. There's no income component to how property taxes are assessed. It's the reason property taxes are called the most regressive kind there are, but the unfortunate reality is that according to the value system and the way it is, that if you're on whether you're on a fixed income or just lost your job, that doesn't change the way properties can be assessed or taxes done. And I'm just being honest. I didn't create the law, but I'm charged with making sure that we're consistent with it. And for the 9 years that we have kept taxes at the lowest rate anywhere for a community with full services, in this year, even if you took values that were assigned to properties to neighboring communities, your taxes would be higher because their mill rates are not $12.75. Those values are consistent across borders. There's, it isn't true anymore that that a house for $380,000 doesn't sell in Bucksport. That's just not a fact anymore. It might have been a fact once upon a time, but it isn't now. And I guess finally the only thing I would say is that the cost factors that drove the increases this year were debt service, primary ones, debt service, education costs, transfer station costs, which we're legally liable for all of those. They're not things we can put off. It's an unfortunate, I almost used the intersection of a lot of things that happened that occurred. If we had done this transition a year ago, you wouldn't have seen it as much, but this year you would, when we had to spend an extra $1 million more than what was appropriated in the prior year. And there wasn't a way to budget differently for what we did because those things were coming anyway. We used an additional, as I said, 332,000 in non-tax revenue to mitigate that as much as possible. What it also said in my manager's report is that people who do not believe that their valuation is fair market value can come and meet with the assessor, and she'll go and do a site visit to, if there's questions on condition or what is or isn't. And then further, if after that they're not satisfied, they have the option of working with the assessor to file an appeal with the Board of Assessment Review. That's a next step. For people who took advantage of the Senior Property Stabilization Program that the state had this year, that froze your taxes at what they were last year, the bad news is the state did away with that program, and that will not be available next year. They have instead replaced it with 2 programs, one of which is through filing a state income tax, a refundable tax credit. And the second is a program in which people the state will pay the property taxes on the properties and put a lien on them for that amount over time, and that lien will be satisfied at the sale of the property or the death of the owner and the sale of the property. Kind of like a state reverse mortgage that only affects property taxes. And we don't even have the applications or how to do that from the state yet. But those are the 2 that are replacing the one. And unlike the first one, which had no income component, anyone who was over a certain age, who had had 10 years of property ownership qualified. That's not the case. The new ones have an income component. So those are, and anyone who wants to be placed on the list to get information about those 2 programs, Caitlin is compiling a list of people who want that information. Get her your name and contact info so she can get it to you if you want to find out about what those are for next year. That's my explanation of where we are, how we got here, and the unfortunate reality that especially for homes that were significantly undervalued from what their fair market value would be, there were significant hits this year. And then there were others who had been adjusted because of sales and other times that didn't feel, the increase was much smaller. Anyway, as I said, Caitlin is answering calls, doing visits. I have answered a lot of phone calls and will continue to do so. And I
So,
this is reality. The answer is no. Where we are, where this valuation and this mill rate is stable.
okay.
That, I guess that's the best. We don't have another $1 million year ahead of us. We said all this year that when all this hits, and the debt service in another 2 years starts to go, drops off the end of it. So mitigation occurs because that debt service.
Okay.
$1.8 million of that debt service drops off in 2 years. So
Any questions? Caitlin, real quick, I assume that we're not the only town that this happened in.
No. It's certainly not unique to Bucksport. Every community has seen an increase in real estate values. Every community has approached it different ways. A lot of communities are just across the board increasing percentage values. The community that I live in has done that the last few years because there's such a long line waiting for revaluations. We were pretty fortunate because our last reval was done in 2019, so all of the data was still relatively good. The rule of thumb is if a property's been visited in the last 10 years, it's usually pretty good data. So because 2019 was just a few years ago, we were able to update our cost schedules and get those rolled out rather than percentage based and hoping that it wasn't unfairly distributing the tax burden. So no, it's not unique to Bucksport.
Thank you.
But we did wait. We waited.
We waited, yeah, because everything spiked so quickly, we didn't want it to decrease so quickly and kind of do that wave of what your property is worth. I think it's safe to say after these last few years, it's stuck. So we had to get where we needed. We needed to get to close to 100% valuation.
And other communities went to 100% before us last year and the year before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are some communities who just have been increasing percentage-wise. So say they got their state reval and they could get to 95%, they increased 5% across the board for all properties to get them to that 100% value. And we never did that. So the last few years we did a 95%, and then we were able to get another 95%, and then this year the highest we could get was 68%.
And I want to say, when you say we, it's the council that makes those
Yeah.
decisions.
I just mean the
It's
town
not-
the town as a whole.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way that it was all laid
Right.
out. Is
And
everybody
it,
took a
and it was a
different
conscious effort and decision on the council
Yeah.
in the past several years to look at that and hope that it was going to come back down and not chase it in the wrong direction. And
Yeah.
here we are.
The other concern over just flat applying percentage increase across the board is that unfairly burdens
More.
Most recent
more
sales.
people.
Yeah, well, most recent sales, and I mean, 5% across the board, maybe. The way cost schedules work is maybe raised ranches are selling for a lot more than a Cape Cod or vice versa. So when you do the cost schedules, that's all taken into account. If you start just blanket 5% across everybody, you're not taxing
It's not
very
equitable.
fairly, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Next is resolve 2024-17 to sell the 2008 ambulance to the highest bidder. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion approved. Second.
Any questions? The only question I have, Mike and or Chief, that second bid that came in from the same person, I've never seen that happen before, where they,
Right out of the blue, yeah. Just an email showed up and one increases bid.
yeah. Okay. Well, he is the high bidder, so. You didn't have another email, did you?
What's that?
You didn't have another email, did you, to bid against himself? All right. You got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you. Item 9 has been removed. We have no resignations. Item 10 is approval of quitclaims, discharge, and deeds. We have none. Item 11 is the town manager report. I think you kind of went through that, what you had on there. Do you have anything else?
If Councillor Rankin was here, he'd say I talked way too much.
I'll second his motion.
I thought you did a good job.
Thank you. I just want to mention that we have our town clerk who's leaving us to go to Pittsfield here toward the end of the month as their manager, which is wonderful for him and not so wonderful for us. And thus far, we've only received 5 applications for this job, and it was scheduled to close today. So if the council doesn't object, I'm going to extend this for another week just to see if we
No
can
objection.
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
get a
with the
few more
holiday and the
applications.
timing.
I was going to say there was a holiday, there was a bunch of stuff in it, so hopefully.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right. Item 12 is public hearings and approval of licenses and permits. Do the licenses and permits first, kind of go out of order. The first, a liquor license renewal for Northeast Historic Film. How the council like to proceed?
Motion approved.
Second.
Chief, you know my question.
No issues.
All those in favor? Passes. I'd like to take out an item not on the agenda. Can I get a motion?
Motion to take up an item not on the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Next liquor license is for Califortian Incorporated liquor license renewal for the House of Pizza. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve. Second.
Questions? All good?
Very good.
All those in favor? Thank you. Next is a CMP poll permit for 3 polls on McDonald Street. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion approved.
Questions? All those in favor? Passes. All right, we'll go down through the public hearings in order here. Open up the public hearing for the commercial solar moratorium ordinance. Anybody have anything to say about that? Nothing? Yeah?
Good evening, I'm Ralph Chapman from School Street. A brief comment, the fifth whereas, the fifth paragraph, this was obviously borrowed from a different ordinance, and the ordinance from which it was borrowed, wording is still in the fifth paragraph, rather than having it updated to be pertinent to this ordinance. So I would recommend solid waste facility licensing and license transfers be replaced by development of commercial solar installations. I'm trying to correct an error, a simple transcribing error here in which the change wasn't made pertinent to this ordinance from the language of the ordinance this was based on. Is that understandable? Any questions? I'm looking at the whereas, the town under its home rule authority, its police power generally, etc. If we could.
That whole paragraph should come out.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you.
That's another way to solve the problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you approve it, you
Right.
approve it as amended.
As amended.
For the removal of that paragraph.
Any other comments? Close the public hearing. Take a motion to approve as amended.
Motion to approve as amended. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Next is a public hearing on the, open up the public hearing on the PPI program, Bucksport Safety, Accessibility, and Economic Study. And this is to refer this to public referendum. Comments? I do have an email from Councilor Rankin that he asked me to read. And I'm okay to read that, correct? Just wanted to make sure I didn't get myself in trouble. Where did that go? Oh, there it is. From Councilor Rankin, his statement. In regards to the PPI program and sending it to referendum, I am currently up in the air with this. It would definitely be a great thing to update the town, but at a cost which makes me nervous. I realize our contribution is a fraction of the money being provided, which makes it very hard to say no to. There has been a tremendous amount of time and effort spent on this by several people. We approved the money previously for the study, and I believe we should forward it on to the ballot this November. Regardless of how any one of us feels about this, I think it's important to recognize the work put into this and money already invested. If any of us don't want this, then we can cast our vote in November to reflect that. I think it should be sent forward and let all of the voters of Bucksport weigh in on this decision. And then, sorry you couldn't be here this evening. Well, not really, but sorry, not sorry. Thank you, Ed Rankin. Anybody else have anything? Yes, sir, come on up.
Don White, Bucksport. I would agree with Councilor Rankin, this should move forward for a town vote. I spent the last couple of days, some walking in the heat, and talking to some business people, tried to hit all the people who paid their dues in town, who've been here for a long time, and get their thoughts on this. And most of them felt it was a reasonable position to take to move it forward, certainly move it forward, and they were in favor of it. That's just my impression. One was kind of waffling on the process and stuff like that. Some of the new businesses or the transient businesses were unsure. When I talked to some people from out back, how can you spend money? How can you spend money in a time when tax bills have gone up? That's a sentiment. So while I think this is a positive thing and needs to move forward, and the town needs to be prettied up a little bit and made a little more friendly, and I think this is an opportunity to do that, I think it needs to be well explained. I think it needs to really be publicized about what this really is, that kind of situation, because some people didn't know a lot about it that should have. And the people who've been around for quite a while did know about it. That's because they've been entrenched and have a lot invested in what's going on. So I appreciate the explanation on the tax from you, Susan. I also understand that people's idea of spending money these days, when your tax bills have gone up for some people. I think it's going to be, I think it should be well explained what the benefits are for the town and the pros and cons of this. And I think we've begun that process, and I think it's going to be it needs to be explained as best as we all possibly can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also spent a lot of time talking to some people on Main Street, business owners, et cetera, and just like Don said, some people didn't even know what it was and what was going on, but one concern that came up with a couple of them was they didn't know if their business would sustain the duration of the project, which is something I really didn't think of. I thought that was a pretty interesting perspective that they laid on us, but I don't like the idea of moving this forward to referendum because it's not what we asked for. We spent a lot of time on this over the last several months, and this summer we had 2 meetings, and parking was always a large issue, and it never got addressed. We had 3 versions of this sent to us. Is that correct, Sue? 3? The final version on August 14th?
Yes.
So when it first came out, parking was an issue. 2 months go down the road, I believe. 2 months? Another version comes out, parking is an issue, and it never got addressed in the plan. To remove 32 parking spaces from the businesses that we're trying to support and sustain is a bad idea. I don't support it.
Well, I mean, I think there's more to this than, angled parking or giving up parking. There's also accessibility of the sidewalks to those that have disabilities. And I think for what we're looking to spend, I don't think we could go address those sidewalks by themselves, ourselves, for the same cost.
So I looked at that angle. I went to Bar Harbor, Belfast, looked at those places, and our sidewalks are in better shape in a lot of places than theirs. Our buildings, however, are way worse.
Yeah, but we're not ADA compliant with our sidewalks.
Absolutely.
And we're never going to get there with just our own dollars.
I understand that.
Okay.
And it's going to take a lot more from our business owners and our buildings to raise up our compliance with bathrooms, elevators, entrances, and things like that to match what we're about to spend on that anyway. This plan just isn't good enough. Like, a try-again option is a good idea.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree with you, Steve.
So I have 2 things to say on your concerns. Parking was addressed, maybe not in the way that everybody was hoping with brand new parking lots and all of that, but in the plan it's highlighted that they want to use the parking lots that we do have and make them more easily accessible, wayfinding signs, more well lit so that folks feel safer walking to and from them, and addressing the sidewalk issues so that folks can get there safer. The Bar Harbor example, when you were driving through Bar Harbor, how many folks did you see just walking in the middle of the street and not on the sidewalks? Because we don't have that here.
Correct. We were missing a lot of that foot traffic.
Right.
No, we're missing the sidewalks, is what she's saying. We don't have them here.
So we don't have folks just kind of walking in the street. Like whenever I've driven through Bar Harbor, you have to kind of yield to pedestrian traffic inside the street. We don't have folks just kind of wandering the streets here. So it's kind of apples to oranges a little bit if we're going to go sidewalk to sidewalk, street to street.
The, one thing which was in contention about whether or not it was going to be related to the large parking lot that is going to be constructed adjacent to the town office, that at one point the property owners were not in favor of, but since that time have agreed that it would be good for their business to have that kind of a parking area and the parking for the town office that way, as opposed to the way it is, you know, that it having dedicated parking spaces within a parking lot maintained by the town was a good thing. That was initially a large point of contention in the parking related to that.
I spoke with them yesterday.
Well, they indicated a week or two ago that they were, I have an email that says they were in favor, that they were supported it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all.
Thank you. I got a business owner, I think, on Main Street that wants to come up and chat about this.
31 years on your Main Street. About time I stood up here. I probably should be in one of
Well,
those
don't wait
chairs.
another 31.
Yeah.
Right?
Could you just give us your name real quick, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Juanita Bowden, 73 Main Street, Neat Styles Hair Salon owner of 31 years. I'm catching up with Frankie Dunbar. I'm not exactly, your plan hasn't been really established with me. You're talking about 32 parking that they're getting rid of, parking spaces that they're getting rid of, right?
Changing.
Change, I mean, they get rid of the angled parking, Juanita,
How much did you spend on that parking lot in back of me?
and it's not
At-
utilized.
It's not at all. And I know that we've spoken, there's no stairs coming down from it. My clients have tried to park there, but they do not want to step over the curbing onto a slant, which is smart. So it's completely obsolete.
Well, I'd like to think we could make remedies to
Part
try
of
to
this
address that.
plan addresses the access to the parking lots. That one, there in particular is the one discussed, because the difficulty with us doing it outside of a plan like this is that it requires extensive construction and easements on what is private property to get to the public area,
Mhm.
and then maintenance and lighting and all the
Yeah.
stuff that goes along with that after. But the access to those parking lots and those things is one of the features, or one of the things that the plan sought to address, is
Mhm.
that to make it easier for people. And then there's the end of the parking that connects community pharmacy, there's that dead space there that, looking at seeing if we could get, an easement to open that up so that all of that,
Mhm.
you know, then from community pharmacy to the Nason lot, which is the one you're talking about, over to the one behind McLeod's, would be a much easier access than asking people to walk up Elm Street to that parking lot, or
Mhm.
those kind of things, which are the ones that are further.
Have we had any progress getting that easement?
Not yet.
I asked
I don't
Mark
think that would be
to-
an issue.
Yeah.
I'm gonna reach out to, she was my landlord, your landlord. at one
Right,
point.
right.
But-
Yeah, I don't think that would be it.
But that is not what's in writing in this plan, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but once we adopt this, this plan is the plan.
This is the concept plan.
It's a concept, yes. I mean,
This is
I think
not-
it's a work in progress that there, I'm looking at it that it's not a finality.
This isn't every single tree that's on the plan is gonna get planted, or every single thing, this is the concept of, go ahead.
So this plan is a concept plan, highlighting, issues in town, what's needed, what could be remedied, all of that kind of stuff, that we can present to the state and to the federal government for those federal dollars. So because it's a safety and accessibility study, we really had to highlight the sidewalks being ADA compliant, foot traffic, car traffic and bike traffic, and everybody being able to use the space so that we can get our foot in the door to get all of that extra money. All of the little things like tree types, the walkways between parking lots, that kind of stuff, that's all kind of secondary. It's still part of the plan, but it's not part of the overall concept plan. So that's all stuff that would be talked about in the next level when we're actually working with the contractors that were hired on for the project.
So you're saying there is some flexibility within the plan to make adjustments?
Yes, yep, so this is entirely concept, so things like, I know people were particular about what kind of style lighting they wanted for streets, they wanted to be more historic looking, like that kind of stuff, that's all secondary to getting our foot in the door for the whole project.
Does this plan have no money in it to get rid of the wires and the telephone poles?
It doesn't.
If you look
It
down
doesn't
Main Street, that's the only thing on Main Street that
Trust
is
me,
an eyesore.
Yes, I was sad when I found out that it doesn't count as
I don't-
accessibility, so, or safety, it's not causing
I don't
us-
think anything is worth doing it until you get rid of the wires.
And that's another, so if that was something that was decided that the town wanted to pay for, that's definitely something that could be done in conjunction with this project.
And what's the
But-
price tag?
Caitlin, we
But
already have
the-
a price tag on that, don't we?
We do have a price tag, it's in the plan, I think it was like four mil, 4.5.
I was gonna say 2, I have it right here, I've been through it. Hang on.
If that's something that the town thought was worth the money to spend on, it can be done in conjunction with this project, so it was happening simultaneously. But it's not something that the state or federal government is gonna pay for us.
Mm.
So it's not
What's-
considered a safety or accessibility issue.
What's the thought about getting rid of the diagonal parking and going with
So,
parallel?
the thought is we did a whole, we did 2 separate counts for how much parking was utilized on Main Street in different times of the day, and how much off-street parking was underutilized in those same times of the day. So the whole point and plan for this project was that if we make the off-street parking more accessible and user-friendly, then that would actually be a safer option anyway than the on-street diagonal parking. And
Have
still
you
being able
ever
to-
watched people parallel park up Main Street?
Yeah.
It's pretty entertaining. You come to my shop, I'd love for you to come to my shop, and you know why. And watch and, you need to,
Yeah, parallel parking is, it's everywhere.
and
It's-
everyone's
it's-
panicked. And I have a lot of older people, and this whole project concerns me, having the road torn up for 2 years. And, yeah, it concerns me for my business. And are they going to be able to come in? And are they gonna have accessibility to the parking lot at the community pharmacy? I mean, you get 8 cars in there and it's pretty much full. So where are they talking about parking while this is being built?
Existing parking lots, I would think, but we need better access to them, it's
Mhm.
acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
But, those would be what we should try to utilize.
Yeah.
To answer the question, it was $4.225 million to bury the power lines between the library and the post office.
It would have been great to get that at 10%, trust me. That just wasn't
Yes.
in the cards.
Yeah.
I don't wanna cut you off.
I think
Anita,
you
but-
should put a pool and a community center in, honestly. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dick Peterson, 11 Buckley Lane, Bucksport. You folks do a wonderful job, but I am concerned about this PPI program, and I'm getting a little bit more concerned understanding it's in concept. Because when we get in concept, and yet you want to go to the voters with a concept, is that what I just heard?
This is the way I believe it's done in every community that's done it.
Yeah, that's fine. We see Searsport over there, putting in a nice new road, nice new sidewalks. But their poles are still there, and it bothers me. So I asked a question here, and I got an answer. I said, so if we build this, which we all want to have, a nice looking downtown, there isn't anyone here that doesn't want to have a nice looking downtown. One, we can't touch it for 40 years, if I understand it correctly, once it's in place. Two, did anyone ask about when they build it, can we build the infrastructure for the future to put the power underground?
We could do it on our dime.
No, that isn't the question I have. When they do this, obviously, you have to make certain decisions, okay? So what would it cost to have it so that if we did decide to do it, we're not gonna tear up the street?
Just run the tunnels underneath.
I'm just saying,
Run the
well,
line.
nobody's asked this question. I know you wanted the power underground, Sue, I believe,
I
okay?
did, you know, 4.25 million is
Yeah.
enough to make me pause for thought.
Oh,
but-
no, I understand. After listening to you talk about taxes and everything, I'm ready to go, oh, yeah, what, another $1 million? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's give it a couple of years here. But again, we moved here in 2016, my wife and I. One of the things was downtown. We loved it. So I know that may be hard to believe, but we actually love the downtown. And our home is close to downtown. Because, I mean, we went for all over the state. We lived in Saco for over 50 years. And then we found Bucksport, and we love Bucksport. So I'm just saying, I'm concerned that we're not addressing the program in a way that really looks at the future. Because once it's done, it's done. Sure, we need sidewalks for handicap and others, okay? We need entrances into the buildings that are better. We all understand those things. Parking, I don't know, has there been a problem with accidents on Main Street?
Not to speak of.
No. So there's no real problem there. So I'm just kind of looking at the overall and asking the question. I feel like I go to a car dealer and I'm gonna buy a car, and I can see the side, and it's a beautiful sports car. Looks lovely. I get ready to drive off. Oh, man, I just paid big bucks. But then they tell me the front wheel on the left side's missing. And by the way, you're never gonna be able to put it on. I'm just concerned about where this is going and how we're getting there. We all want a beautiful downtown, and everyone here, including the folks in the back, work hard. You folks all work hard. I'm just asking to take a good look at this before you go to the voters.
Caitlin or Rich, real quick, I got a question. So, this doesn't pass. There is a timeline on this grant funding or money available for this, correct?
Yeah.
And not knowing what's coming up down the pipe, how many meetings have you folks had throughout this process?
We as department heads have had separate meetings as well, where public safety and public works.
And then meeting with the contractors and then public meetings, I'd say probably total 12 meetings,
And public ones were how many?
3.
And had you heard these concerns during the public meetings?
Most of the concern that we heard was the removal of the angled parking, which was to be expected. That was an expected one. But mostly that's really the only concern that I heard.
Sorry, I don't want to cut anybody off in the public, but, and I'll try to be brief. I wouldn't want to upset Councilor Rankin. In 1990, when I was 15 years old, now you all know how old I am, and I don't want to talk anymore about that. I mentioned to a member of this council, who also happened to be my grandfather, that I didn't think it was a good idea to reconstruct Main Street without burying the power lines. And I was not one to argue with my grandfather very often. I mention that because as I look at this plan, I too am disappointed with the fact of the price tag of what burying the power lines would be, the utility lines, excuse me, between what is in effect the library to the post office. That said, I'm trying to put that bias aside and look at the plan as a whole, and also take into account the work that's gone into it. But ultimately, my deciding factor as to how I'm going to vote is this. The council, the people on this council have heard me say a number of times, my personal belief that we are elected to make decisions and that we need to do that. And there are instances, however, where I think sometimes those things need to go to the voters. And if we are going to have a conversation about, even conceptually, what we are going to do with the future of Main Street moving forward, I think it behooves us to have that conversation with the public and let the public decide at referendum, and not leave it up to the 4 people here this evening, or even if we had 7 people here, to leave it up to those 7 people. I would say that I don't find this plan perfect. I think there are issues with it that I hope that we can address conceptually, and there's a lot of meaning tied up in that word hope, and I get it. But I also would say that people should not be caught unaware. This is the report, and if you plan on living in Bucksport for a while, you should read through this before you show up to the polls in November and make an informed decision. You should not be surprised, because it will change how things are done on Main Street if we move forward with it. That is my opinion. I am going to vote to set the referendum.
If I may, we've had recent conversation, Caitlin, I should say, has recent conversation with the DOT. And currently Bucksport has 2 options. Commit $250,000 for PE, which likely starts the process sooner. Since Maine DOT has funding available in a 50-50 non-federal program, this will not require an addition to next year's federal work plan. Or, option 2, commit $50,000 for PE and formally request Maine DOT consider this as a federal project in the next work plan, though this will require going through next year's work plan process and will compete against other similar projects in Maine for funding. Regarding option 2, the Bucksport project is further along than other VPI studies and is viewed as a highly favorable candidate. When we talk about detours, when we talk about Searsport, I've made many trips to Belfast, and what you do is you go down, you get to Black Street, you turn up, you go around, and you're caught off by one street. What this may do in the interim is if we caught off one street and come down another one, you're going to go by our empty parking lots. I physically walked both parking lots, the entire Main Street and every parking lot on 2 separate occasions, on 2 separate days of the week for this study. I personally visualized how many cars, and it's an embarrassment to see how few people work there. When I first started here, the biggest complaints I had was the lack of parking on Main Street because business owners parked in front of their doors. It's centered around the Alamo building. There was the Alamo, Studio 83, and at the time it was the flower shop, and then you had the folks up on Elm Street. And constantly my phone would ring because the businesses on that side of the road wanted the parking for themselves. If your business is worth going to, people will find a way. When your streets look full, people are intrigued. Why is it always filled here? I want to see what the hype is. If you check the Friars at 3:30 in the morning, they open at 12. The dang line is down to just about Camden National Bank. If you've got empty parking lots, you've got empty streets, people are going to continue to drive. It's the same adage. Our businesses are closed on Monday. If I'm a visitor and I come here on Monday, there's no options. I'm not coming back. That's what this does. This will provide, yes, the roads will be torn up. The road is overdue, according to the DOT, it's overdue to be paved and milled and filled. That's a fact. Yep. It was paved from Frank's down to the North Gate, and it was paved from the traffic light to Rob's Hardware. This section is past 20 years. It needs to be redone. So yes, people will be detoured, but it's going to get them to other sides on side streets where we have other businesses as well, and they go by the parking lots. So I understand, looking at it in the now, it may be a burden. I didn't say it's sport to get around. It's a 1 street difference, and then I'm on my way. Yes, the poles aren't gone, but they're backed up off the road. If you try to walk by this town office, there's a pole right in the way. 2 people cannot walk through at the same time. You should have at least, for a wheelchair, 3 foot. We don't have that. We're going and looking into the future. This plan looks to 40 years into the future. The plan doesn't last 40 years. I may not have been clear when I made that, but the plan looks 40 years into the future. What are you doing to better your community for 40 years in the future for safety, accessibility, and economic impact?
And it also looks at things in the future like high water lines and things like that that are going to affect parking on this side of the street, the waterfront, all of that kind of stuff is also taken into effect for the future. It's not a plan for now, it's a plan to better the community going forward. for the future.
Without buried power lines.
Yes.
Without the
Unless
ta-
we wanna spend the money on that.
without the town choosing to bury the power lines, because there is no program to help us do that. What I will say, and the town council has been instrumental, we have replaced the deteriorating walls, which has made it nice and appeasing when you get to the traffic light. We don't have crumbling walls. We did a downtown district exterior improvement grant. Businesses took advantage of it, and the business owners who take pride in their buildings have done so, and they've gone over and above and done additional work to those buildings, even after the grant was expired, even after they got paid. In regards to the buildings, it's the building owners. Everyone had an opportunity to apply for that grant. The same people continue to collect rents and are content on where they are and chose not to, and that is their opinion to do that. But if we want to work on getting the buildings here, we all have to work together as a community, business owners and building owners, just like the building owner we talked about with the finance committee. The people who wanted to rent her building demanded upgrades, and she did it. If the building owners aren't gonna take pride in this town or in their building, then that's when we have this. To go back to the parking lot behind where Juanita's business is, she was approached, the building owner was approached about connecting the parking lots at the time it was done, because it's cheaper to do it right and do it right the first time. The property owner at first agreed to meet with Luke and then decided she didn't want to because her tenants didn't think there was gonna be parking for them. They would have had a better parking situation because they would have been in a lot. It's the fact of the unknown which is scary for people. But if we're gonna move in the future, we have to take a chance. We didn't downsize when the mill shut down. We didn't lay off people. We continue to spend money and do the right thing for the citizens of this town. If we stay stagnant or decide to cut services or do nothing, we're going in the wrong direction. We need to do what we've been doing and continue to go forward. You all have an opinion, and I value your opinion. But what I am saying is, don't be afraid of the unknown. If the voters don't want it, they will come out and vote. This is a non-gubernatorial, non-presidential election. If it's important to the voters, they will come out and have their voice heard. Traditionally, we don't have many people show up. If people are concerned about $10 million, which on the town's behalf would be $1 million, they will go to the polls.
Rich, do you think, from your interactions with MDOT, if we didn't do it this year, does that diminish our chances of doing it in the future?
I'll tell you on the federal level, it possibly could, because in my dealings with Susan Collins' office in regards to the $4.1 million for the town dock, they don't want controversy. They want projects that are they don't want pie in their face. They want projects that are supported by the town. I'm sure they're gonna want minutes from these meetings to see that whether or not these things were approved. And if we have a decline, and everyone is entitled to a vote, it's why you're sitting in where you are. I'm sure it may not look as favorable if we decide to, at this point, say no, but 6 months down the line, we decide to say yes. Now, what you take into consideration, we will have a different council in place at that time. I don't know how that will weigh with the federal. On the state side, I can't answer to that to you. Today, we rank favorably. I don't know 6 months down the line.
And their work plan is looking 2, 3, 4 years out.
Right.
Right.
So this isn't something that's happening for, next year
Right.
at all. Like, contractors will start being talked to next year and then be put on their schedules, and they have to all work with each other to get so it's a whole, I think they said 2025 might be the first year we'd even see
And
a start of anything.
one last thing, if this were to move forward, do you think there'd be a possibility of maybe trying to do one more public meeting prior to a vote? Is that anything that would be possible to try to?
Yeah, we definitely can do a public meeting. It'd be more informational. Our contract with the contracting company who made up the plan is over now, so they wouldn't be able to change the plan that's in front of us.
Right.
But an informational meeting could definitely.
I think doing what you guys have done here tonight, for a larger audience in whether it's up to the Performing Arts Center or something, just open it up, to a lot of folks' points here that we may just not know. And if we broadcast it, the plan is online, everybody can see it.
Yes.
But I think having you folks who are intimate with this, just being there and doing like you've done tonight, certainly will at least give them the information, a better sense of where they're at, if they don't know. So,
Mayor, put Deputy Public Safety Director Gagan on the spot and have you ask him what his thoughts are on the plan on the public safety side, 'cause I think that's important, if he's willing to speak.
Oh, he's gonna speak, there's no willing about it.
Chief Hagan, please tell us what you think on a public safety side of life.
Rich.
Impromptu speech. Reviewing the plan, I do have concerns with the parking right now on Main Street on this side of the road. You've all done it, you've all experienced it.
You have concerns now.
Now I do, yes, and just, have we had many accidents? We have not, but it is not the safest situation to be backing out.
If you've got a
of any
Toyota
of these
Prius on
spots.
a 3/4 ton pickup.
Right, because you can't see,
tough.
and I think that we've been fairly lucky and haven't had more accidents, because I can't sit here tonight and say that that's safe. It just isn't. The other side, I say that, but an accident is an unintentional event. We had an accident the other day in the parallel parking where a vehicle pulled out and hit a motorcycle, the turner. It can happen. But as far as the parking on this side of the road, I can't say that it's a
But would you say
safety issue.
public parking lots off-street would be safer?
Absolutely. And I wish, I've been in all these meetings, and I wish that people would utilize those more. I think if we make them more accessible, like we said, we have a nice one, if we could get it so that there are steps there and the handicap accessible, I think people would use it more, as Juanita said. And I don't think they're utilizing them at all at this point for some of those reasons, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm off the Elm Street parking lot, and I drive by
Right.
the Central Street one, and there's barely anybody ever in there. I mean,
Right.
the Nason one.
Right. I do agree with Paul, too. I was here in 1989. I walked Main Street in 1990 when they started that construction. I didn't see a major issue with the flow of traffic back then. I think that a lot of the businesses that were there then are still here now, and some have come and gone and they've filled in. So I don't, as Rich said, I think people are used to that, and in order to get better, you're gonna have to put up with that. And I do wish that back then I was new at the time. I didn't think of it, but it would have been the time to put them underground and we wouldn't be having this conversation, but,
I would tell those of us that live out back and wanna come in on a summer day,
yeah.
I do not go out to Route 1 and 46 because traffic can be backed up there.
Right.
I'll go in and then I'll be able to park, you know,
Right,
at the Mason lot or someplace there.
right,
I'm still coming in town, but trying to battle the traffic out there is, you know,
right.
so.
Chief, do you think with the plan that's laid out that it'll make Main Street safer, slow down traffic if we have a narrower Main Street?
Oh, I think it will. I think it will. I know a lot of people don't like the bump outs and stuff. But I think if you replace it the way that, and you narrow it down, it will slow it down some. Obviously, some people aren't gonna slow down at all, and I realize that, but I do think
In
it would have
general.
the potential to slow it down if you narrow
But
it
those
down.
bump outs too, especially where the crosswalks are, have to help because you're more visible as a pedestrian walking
Right.
out there. I think in front of your
Right.
shop where those bump outs are, I mean, you
They
can
do
see,
get you out
can
and
see those
visible
folks
for
there
sure, rather than.
sooner than you can.
Yeah.
Well, that's another bonus too that they pointed out, with the parallel parking.
Yeah, you
there's
have
the
angled
angles.
parking, so if you have a car parked there, you have to get out
Yeah.
past the
So now
car.
the bump out can kind of stick out beyond the cars a
Right.
little bit that are parked there, so you can see pedestrians rather than just see cars.
Right.
So that would also be a safety aspect that they pointed out.
So you don't think narrowing the road would create a traffic jam back towards the light and create issues with our stoplight that we already have issues with?
Well, the issues with the stoplight were a timing issue, and they're working on that. That stoplight is an original in the box. The computer is, when people come to work on it, open it up, they really look at it and say, what is that? Because it's kind of an original from when they put it in. The state has it on the list. Sue and I have been working with them to replace that box so it's more modern, so.
2025.
20, yeah, a few years, but I think it's gonna be sooner than that. I've talked to them a few times now, and they keep coming down and fixing it, but, and we did switch a little bit of timing so that Verona's 5 seconds less than it was, so that took care of a lot of it. As far as backing up traffic, there is a lot of traffic through Main Street during the day in the summer, but I don't know that, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think it would be that much of an issue to back it up to the light. And if it did, I think that's adjustable in the computer, I mean, if we did have that. And on the other hand, it's not a bad idea to back them up and let them look at all the businesses while they're sitting there and stuff, and jump out and get an ice cream, whatever they wanna do.
Thanks, Chief. So our 27 Main Street project.
27 Main Street project has been delayed due to the fact of being delayed on our end with attorneys for 3 months, so it's pushed it back.
I wasn't even asking about.
even better.
I was gonna get more concerned with parking, because they were talking about parking off-street there, correct?
Yes, there's some off-street parking
They
parking
don't
there.
lose any.
They don't lose any parking, nor do they prior to this plan, consideration of getting rid of one of those ins and outs, right? So there's two ways in and out. There was talk prior to us selling it of them eliminating one of those, and that's not going to be the case. They are going to keep both entrances
entrances.
for that with this plan.
But all parking for that project is on site.
Yes.
But
That's-
that side
Yes.
already has the parallel
Parallel
parking,
parking.
and it's all being maintained on that side of the
Yep.
street too.
Correct.
The parking lot behind Juanita's,
Yep.
if Mark can look into that and
Mhm.
and pull that scenario off, you said there's no changes that can be done if we have a public meeting before the referendum.
So yeah, so
How-
not in this plan. Something like that could definitely. So this isn't what's being presented to the contractors that we're gonna. If we go through with this and we get the money from the state, we get chosen for everything. Everything goes smooth. This isn't the end all be all plan. So after this, there would be talks with people in specific fields, and that's something that could be added on and engineered correctly. So it wouldn't be added into this plan, no, before it went to a vote.
But this,
But part
since
of
it's a concept, this isn't the final design anyway. So the fact that it's not there
Right.
doesn't mean that it couldn't be there if,
and it fits
If
the scope
access
of the,
can be
yeah, and
required.
And it fixed the
it
scope.
fits the scope of the plan.
Juanita, how do you feel about that scenario? If that was to be pulled off and that parking lot behind you was to be opened up for better parking?
Good.
Better?
Yeah, I think it's, it would be nice to utilize that parking lot
Okay.
I would agree.
and not see it empty all the time.
And really keep people away from the
And
road,
safe.
honestly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
safe.
yeah. Okay.
Any other comments? Close the public hearing. Take a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Does not pass. Next item. Public hearing is open for the charter change, council wages. This is also to refer to public referendum. As we put in the charter change has to go to referendum. We can't just give ourselves a raise anytime we want. So what has been added under the charter rules, the pay has not been increased, and I mentioned it during the budget process to look at pay for councilors and for the planning board. Planning board does not have to go to a charter change, it's just the council. So the language that we have in here has been allowed to make it happen at the budget process if necessary, but in order to do that, we need to change the charter, so.
and the other thing I did was I put in the amount from January to June that you had approved as part of
Correct.
this year's budget. And then when you do the budget in the spring, you would establish it would go for the next fiscal year as part of that process.
Any questions? Close the public hearing. Take a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Passes. All right, next is discussion items not on the agenda for the council and the public. Anybody in the public have anything that's not on the agenda?
Rich just got something.
Rich has something?
Just something. Not this Friday, but next Friday. I encourage all citizens of Bucksport, whether you were a former football player or not, but to come join us up on the hill at Carmichael Field. We'll be celebrating former head coach Joel Sankey. So the ceremonies, I believe, will start at 5:30. Chief?
Yeah, sometime right after 5. Game starts at 6, so we'll be right before the corner
So just wanted to make that out there for the public. So thank you.
Thank
Thank you all
you.
for your time.
Anybody else? All right, upcoming public hearings, we have regulatory review on our next meeting at 6 o'clock, and that's reference the motel. And then we also scheduled, don't have the calendar in front of me.
For the first meeting in October.
Yeah.
October.
Infrastructure, yeah.
And
Infrastructure.
economic development's on Monday.
Economic development is on Monday, the
Yes,
11th,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock,
Yeah, infrastructure would be the 12th.
12th. Let's do that at 6 o'clock also. Yeah. Nothing else? Take a motion for
Motion to
adjournment?
adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.